A doctor, a lawyer, and an engineer are playing 18 holes at their local course, and they find they're stuck behind a really slow foursome. After taking an hour and a half to get through 3 holes, they call one of the club stewards over and ask what the holdup's all about. "Well, sirs," says the steward, "these guys are all firefighters, and they were all blinded in a terrible accident at the orphanage while they were rescuing the children from the fire. So the club committee voted to let them play here once a week for free. We're sorry for the inconvenience, but I'm sure you understand it's the least the community can do for a bunch of heroes." "I'm sure there's more that could be done," says the doctor. "There's all sorts of pioneering work being done just now in restoring sight. I'll take a look at this and see if anything can be done for them." "That's likely to run into money," says the lawyer. "Tell you what, I bet these guys aren't getting all the compensation they're entitled to. I'll take that case pro bono." And the engineer says, "Since they're blind, why don't you just let them play at night?" A grasshopper walks into a bar. The bartender looks up and says, "Hey, we have a drink named after you." Grasshopper says, "You have a drink named Irving?" A man walks into a diner. An attractive young waitress comes to take his order. He smiles at her and says, "I'd like a quickie, please." She gives him a sour look and says, "Haha, but seriously, what can I get you to eat?" "Seriously," he says, "I'd like a quickie. Can I have a quickie?" Now the waitress is getting irritated. "Hold on, I'll be right back," she says. When she returns, she has the burly cook with her. "Okay, sir, let's try this again. What would you like to order?" "I'd really like a quickie, just like I was telling the waitress here." The cook loses his patience, grabs the man by his shirt, and starts to hustle him out of the diner. On the way out, a guy sitting at the next booth calls out to him, "Hey buddy, just so you know for next time, it's pronounced quiche." There are 3 candidates for the CIA, 2 men and a woman. They send the first guy in with a gun and tell him to kill whoever is in the room. He goes in all macho but sees his wife in the room. He grabs her and leaves. The next guy goes in and he tries, but grabs his wife's hand and tells her he loves her too much, and they leave. They hand the gun to the woman and she goes into a room that has her husband in it. They hear the clicks and then a tremendous noise. They run in and she calmly looks at them and says, "There wasn't any bullets in the gun, so I had to beat him to death with a chair." A chicken is lying in the middle of the road near to death with tire tracks across his back. He looks up to the people around him and his last words are, "Don't ask." There's a guy in the pub and he sees another guy standing at the bar with a normal-sized body, but with a head the size of an orange. After a few drinks, he walks over and says, "Excuse me, mate, I don't mean to be rude, but why is your head the size of an orange?" So the guy tells him that some years ago, he woke up on a desert island with no knowledge of how he got there. After walking around the island for several days, he discovered a lamp that had been washed up on the shore. He rubbed the lamp, and a genie popped out and said, "You may have one wish, any wish." So the guy said, "Well, can you build me a bridge to the nearest landmass so I can walk off this island, please?" But the genie said, "Wouldn't you like a boat or a plane instead?" And the guy said, "No, because you told me that I could have one wish, any wish, and my wish is for this bridge." The genie said, "I cannot do that. You are 3,746 miles from the nearest landmass, and the ocean is up to 5 miles deep in places. You are on a separate tectonic plate, and there are 1,000 other engineering considerations, as well as the logistical problems involved with the sheer scale and quantity of materials involved. I'm sorry, but it's too difficult. You will have to ask me for another wish." So the guy said, "You're not a very good genie, are you?" He thinks for a while and said, "Well, I haven't had sex in quite a while. Is there any chance of that?" The genie said, "Absolutely not. Everything below my waist is not physical. It is just a spirit." So the guy thought for a short moment and said, "Well, what about a little head then?" Some decades ago, a group of scholars discovered a bizarre request in the will of composer Ludwig von Beethoven. It said he wanted to be buried sitting at his favorite piano. Naturally, the scholars wanted to investigate this, so they contacted the relevant authorities and arranged to go to the Viennese cemetery where the great man had been buried. The grave was dug up, and sure enough, there was a huge coffin, big enough to hold a piano. But that wasn't enough. They needed to see whether Ludwig's piano really was in there. So the coffin was pried open, and inside, to their surprise, they did indeed see Beethoven sitting at his piano with a sheet of music manuscript. Strangely, he was erasing the music. "What are you doing?" they asked. "Leave me alone," he shot back. "Can't you see I'm decomposing? An Englishman, an Irishman, and a Scotsman all of them 90 years old, were taking part in a medical study on aging. The doctor asked them about any changes they'd noticed as they got older. The Englishman said, "I'm wearing hearing aids now. My hearing isn't what it used to be." The Scotsman said, "My eyesight has gotten worse. I've needed bifocals for years." The Irishman said, "Well, last night I was in bed with the wife, and I reached over to her. And she said, 'Get away out of there. You were there just 10 minutes ago.' So I think my memory's going. 3 men die, and they're at the pearly gates awaiting entry into heaven." St. Peter asked the first guy how he died. The guy replied, "St. Peter, I don't really know how it happened, but I'm walking past this apartment building and a refrigerator fell out of the sky, crushed me to death. And here I am." St. Peter replied that the man had led a good life on earth, and through no fault of his own, he died and granted entry into heaven. St. Peter asked the second guy how he died. The guy said, "I was sure that my wife was cheating on me, so I came home unexpectedly, hoping to catch them together. As I opened the app door, I heard a door slam. I ran to the window, saw this man walking on the sidewalk, and I was sure he was the one. In a fit of rage, I grabbed our refrigerator and threw it out the window to kill him. In the process, I had a heart attack and died." St. Peter looked at the man and said that you too had lived a good life on earth, and we understand crimes of passion. The man was granted entry into heaven. St. Peter looked at the third man and asked him the same question. The guy said, "St. Peter, I'm not really sure how I died. I was just sitting in this refrigerator, minding my own business. A guy's house is on fire, so he calls the fire department. 'Quick, come, my house is on fire,' he says. Fireman answers, 'Okay, how do we get there?' Guy answers, 'Don't you still have that red truck?' Mike and Pat meet in the village street. Mike sees Pat is carrying a closed bag and says to him, 'What have you got in the bag?' Pat replies, 'Ducks.' Mike says, 'Tell you what, if I can guess how many, will you give me one?' Pat replies, 'If you can guess how many, I'll give you both of them.' Mike says, 'Great,' and then thinks for a bit. Then he says, 4. An old man used to earn his living via traveling from village to village in his van selling chickens. It was during the war, and on one occasion while he was traveling, he was stopped by the military and was asked to explain what he was doing. Then they asked him about the food he gave to the birds. He replied, 'Grains. How can you waste precious grain on birds while the population are starving?' So they fined him, and he continued on his way. On a second occasion, he was stopped again and asked about the food he gives to the birds. This time he said, 'I give them any leftover vegetables.' The military weren't pleased, and they fined him again. The poor guy thought if he gets another fine, he would be bankrupt. So on a third occasion, he heard the same question about bird feed, to which he replied, 'I give the birds the money and they do their own shopping.